A very warm welcome to this webinar. This is a collaboration between Pearson Excel and Act On It. We will be talking about and exploring ideas around capturing the development process when working on a creative project. As part of this webinar, we will hear from industry professionals, as well as sharing part of an outcome from a creative process. It is important to remember your process is unique and valuable. This is a chance for you to build and develop your creative practice. We hope you find this webinar helpful. Why do we need to capture the creative development process when undertaking a project? Well, it may be because we want to be able to share our ideas with others, and we need to capture the detail as we go along. Or we may not fully remember how or why we made the creative decisions we did, especially when working practically. It can be used to capture the creative process when working on all types of creative project. But if your project is for a formal qualification, such as an extended project qualification, it will be important to be able to evidence the development phase. We can now hear from Kim Gillespie, an experienced theatre director, who will share his thoughts on this.
Hi, I'm Kim Gillespie. I'm a theatre director and applied theatre practitioner. I work in a lot of different places. My work has taken me into traditional theatres with traditional classical theatre of Shakespeare. It's taken me into community spaces. It's taken me into village halls, and also big outdoor spaces in site-specific environmental theatre. It's also taken me into corporate settings where I've done applied theatre with people on training courses, so management, performance management, that kind of thing. And so I work with a lot of different kind of people. They are professionals, actors, dancers, musicians, but there's also been some amateur work, some pro-am productions, some collaborations, but also with people not involved in the theatre that are actually benefit a lot from the kind of work that I do in drama. When I'm not working as a theatre director, and you'll find that as a professional there are times when the work doesn't come in, I like to make sure that I keep active creatively and carry on with artistic work. And to do that, I write a lot, and I also make notes on new work that I want to be doing, and I kind of spread out the research material to help me do that. The other thing that really helps me is making sure that I consult the notes that I've got on the work that I've done previously over many years. And I've got many of these notebooks. It really helps me to refresh the ideas that I have. It may be work that I've done, but it gives me inspiration and it gives me new ideas to move forward. So it's really essential as part of my work that I make extensive notes on any of the creative work that I'm doing, and that is in the form of drawings or notebooks or any kind of annotation or commentary on the work. It's really important that you do that.
When working on a creative project, it will be helpful to think of the different stages of the development and how to best capture the great work you are doing. How and what you capture will be different for different types of project. Key stages of the development you could think about will include the exploration of ideas, how your ideas were explored practically. Did you draw, improvise, or make something to try out your ideas? Did you share your ideas with others to see how well they responded? What informed your ideas? Did you have conversations, take part in workshops, or visit relevant places? You will need to fully consider the alternatives that are available. Consider style, genre, and creative intentions. Then you may want to think about the skills development phase. Did you need to learn new skills or techniques? Did you need to adapt your skills and techniques? How did you do this? How did you know what exercises, processes or practices you needed to use? The development of performance work is often through rehearsals. Other types of creative projects will have other development methods and tools. It is important to replicate professional practice where possible, as this will aid your progression overall. Now we have thought about why we want to capture our creative development process. How is it best to do this? You could consider using a notebook, a logbook, a journal or a diary to record discussions or rehearsals. Or it may be more appropriate for a sketchbook or a portfolio for some types of project. Other options may be to keep a record of the key activities and tasks that you take part in, such as read-throughs, workshops, or making and drawing. You may choose to keep a blog or vlog. Remember that if you choose a method of capturing your creative process that suits your way of working, then you're more likely to use it regularly, and in turn, it will have greater purpose. We can benefit from thinking about what will or has informed our creative journey. You will take part in a genuine finding out phase, so your project has informed creative intentions and is built on a solid foundation of relevant information. As part of capturing this, you will be asking yourself questions, making observations, having new or refined ideas, and using the information and research you have undertaken to develop your thinking, and therefore your creative process will be robust and interesting. You may want to look at key practitioners linked to the work you are doing. This may help inform the style or genre of your work, and also the content in terms of themes and ideas. By making this a key part of your development, you will be open to the consideration of alternative ideas or other points of view and of different ways of working. Remember, the creative choices you make are to help you inform and shape your work. If you know why you have made certain choices and rejected other ideas, you will be able to respond to others when they question your way of working. You are a key influence for others in the future. You are the future. Be imaginative, be clear, be informed, and trust the value of your creativity. So now you will be thinking about the types of research you can do to help you build this strong foundation and help you realise your project. Secondary research may include reading books or journals, looking at websites and online resources. You may also use case studies. This type of research will be captured in a bibliography, which will no doubt be a familiar way for you to list and credit the sources of information you have used. When you are working creatively, you may also access primary sources, as you will spend time away from your desk and computer, for example in a studio, rehearsal room, workshop, or other spaces. The information you use and access by looking at things, talking to people, and watching and experiencing work will also be valuable and will need to be captured. Think of how you work best. Do you keep notes or voice memos to record the who, where, when, and why of this type of research? Would you like to keep a blog or vlog? Developing practices you will use and that suit your way of working will be the best. What else informs a creative process? The research and the development phase may also need you to think about other aspects of what will be needed for you to realise your project. It may be helpful to undertake a skills audit. Think objectively about what skills you will need in order to meet your creative aims. For your project to be successful, do you need to develop or adapt some of your skills and techniques? If so, how will you do this? How will you record this development? Little and often is the best way to capture a process. Don't wait until the end and try to remember all the small things you did that made the project happen. Each small step was part of the success. It will be helpful, alongside the development process, to build your lexicon of key terms and references. Using technical and vocational vocabulary will build your knowledge and understanding too. We will now look at a case study, so we can share some points of reference for a creative development process. Rachel Steele from Act On It will talk about the development process they undertook as part of the Shouting Out project. The project involved a creative collaboration between theatre practitioners and marginalised young people to write 5 short monologues. It was important they included the participants in the creative development process. Rachel is one of the founders and directors at Act On It and was a practitioner working on this creative project. In the following clips, she will talk about the different phases of the process, including how to explore, inform, refine, and realise a creative project.
Hello, my name's Rachel and I'm a director at Act On It. I would like to share with you some more information about how we developed the Shouting Out project. When we were planning the project, we needed to break down the development stage of the work into smaller sections in order for us to be able to take the creative process through each important stage. A main aim of the project was to collaborate with a group of marginalised young people, and we very much wanted to capture their voices in the writing of the monologues. To do this, we needed to explore ideas. The project wanted to communicate the experiences the young people were having during the very challenging lockdown that we've all just experienced. In order to focus the work and for the 5 monologues to belong together, we decided to look at the lighter side of the lockdown experience. Once this was decided, we had a feel for the type of content. But in order for the young people to shape the ideas, we decided to use a tried and tested approach. That is, to use a stimulus as a shared starting point for the exploration of ideas phase. We used images. The images included photographs and drawings of a plate of chips, a TV, a bookcase, a job advert, and someone lying on a sofa. The images were shared. Ideas were explored through mind maps and conversations. Words, phrases, comments and reactions were noted down. Then the next phase was to develop the opening lines for the 5 monologues. Once a focus for each of the monologues was agreed, we created working titles such as Chips and Staring. This helped with the organisation of the monologues, and we could start to add to each one when ideas or words came to mind. We then shared again, this time through Zoom meetings, emails and texts, to build the creative conversation and to add the next sections to the monologues. The writing was passed around the group, so we each built the conversation. We started to refine the work. We could now start to craft the writing. This involved looking at aspects of the work, such as structure and style. We decided to use a talking head style. Our audience was young people and those working to support young people at this time. We could now share the work with a small group of trusted peers to get feedback and to check clarity and understanding.
The collaboration stage was very important for this project, so the work was passed between participants and practitioners in the same way a conversation goes back and forth. Act On It captured this phase with the various drafts of the monologues, so we could see how they were building, and also with notes on the ideas and suggestions behind them. It was then time to reflect Act On It reviewed and made some final modifications to the monologues. They checked and refined the creative content, the structure, and practical aspects such as running time. Now it was time to share the monologues with a group of young performers. They read through the work, rehearsed the readings, and recorded them to camera. Here are two of the monologues for you to see the outcome. The end point for this project was to create rehearsed readings or scratch performances to share on YouTube.
I've been asked what my ideas are for what I want to do for a job. Again. But because she can't see me whenever she calls me to be my teacher, I just look at the TV and come up with an answer from whatever I see. She called yesterday to check in on how I was doing in lockdown and if I was managing my anger. I told her she made me angry, so she shouldn't call so much. I didn't tell her I was lonely. I told her I wanted to be Piers Morgan. She listened. Then she said I was being facetious. I thought she called me fat, so I hung up. After, I told her she was fat. She called me back though. The news was on now, so I finally had an answer she wanted. I'm gonna be a professor. What is a professor? They're on TV a lot. They're tall. I'm tall. I think I'll grow a moustache and be that kind of professor, yeah. I know stuff. Why are you asking me what I'm going to be? I'm going to be a professor, so leave me alone. You're making me angry.
I'm going to stare more. I'm good at it. I've learned to do it really well. It's my lockdown skill. I'm giving up smiling. It's a waste of time. I'm giving up being nice because I annoy myself when I hear my nice voice. I like freaking people out with my brilliant staring. I'm a natural. When I stare, I've got a stare voice in my head. It's cool, my stare voice. It says stuff like, flare your nostrils, widen your eyes, open your eyes really wide, pretend to growl from inside and let it make your face weird. It's best when you stare at someone close up. You can do it on video chat when they say, oh, sorry, can't hear you. Then you can say, oh, I can hear you. And then just still stare. And they don't know what you're doing. Staring is definitely better than smiling. I can do it for ages. I feel in control. When we start going out again, I'm going to stare at everyone I meet. There's this little kid next door and sometimes he looks in our window from his garden, so I stare at him and it makes him cry. His mum told my nan. She said I was upsetting him. So my nan stared at her. I love my nan.
It will be helpful to informally share some or all of the work to make sure you have met your objectives. Be sure to seek feedback from useful sources. Be very clear with what you ask people to feedback on, making sure it is constructive feedback. It is an exciting phase in a creative development process when the time comes to share your work. This may be with your target audience or the commissioning body or client. Once a process is near to completion, it can be useful to reflect on the work and to consider if it is appropriate to make any modifications. To do this, it will be important for you to focus on the creative intentions of the work and only to make changes that help communicate these intentions. Try to avoid adding more content than is needed. Thank you for taking time to access this webinar. We very much hope it has been interesting and useful to you. Good luck with your creative projects, and whether your project is for a qualification or not, we hope you will find it useful to keep a record of your creative development process. Good luck.